What up, y'all? It is Anti-Negative, and today we're going to be talking about the ban and restricted announcement that happened on Monday, and then we're also going to talk a bit about the standard meta. So let's talk about that a bit, and hopefully I can keep it nice and short and sweet and not too dragged on here, because there's a bit to talk about. I mean, there's not that much to talk about with other formats, but at least there's a bunch of stuff to discuss about historic and standard. So that's what we'll be doing. All right, so let's get to the announcement here. So with the banned and restricted announcement on Monday, February 9th, we pretty much had no changes to any format in paper, and that is not a bad thing. This is an announcement that they're going to be doing semi-regularly, and this is to ensure that they have enough windows to address things that will need to be addressed, and so they don't have terrible metas like the VV Cauldron, Quarry Steel, things where it was like multiple months of just a terrible meta and pretty much unapproachable, unplayable standards. So that is kind of the main reasons why we're getting a bunch of ban and restricted announcements. And if you could have guessed that standard would see no changes, you would be right. And not really hard to assume that that would be the case, because given the state of standard right now, there's really nothing that would even meet the bar anywhere close to what would be a bannable card. Yeah, just that is what it is. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah, let's get to the actual stuff they changed here. And for the most part, it is all alchemy stuff. And alchemy has been something of a pain point for most players, especially people who don't particularly like MTGA. It's completely valid to, I guess, reject alchemy as a concept, because these cards only exist digitally. So if you're trying to practice for paper, standard, or paper formats, MTGA is now not a good thing. So people try to play Brawl in order to test their commander decks, etc., and it's just not one-to-one, so they don't know what they're doing. You know, if you want my personal opinion on that, I think because MTGA is so self-contained, really with this type of stuff, it shouldn't matter that much to you. If you really want to take a stance against it, it's fine. I know people in the creator space like to have like very strong opinions on this, and it's one of a couple ways. Either you don't care and you play it, or you don't care and you don't play it, and that's where I am. I personally do not care, and I don't play it. If you see it as a cash grab, don't give them cash for it. So that's just kind of it. And then there's other people who reject it as a whole and will not play Brawl, will not play Historic, will not play Timeless, just because the existence of an alchemy card physically makes them sick. You know what? That's fine for you. I'm not going to subscribe to that type of mentality, because that's pretty toxic. And, you know, they're just kind of making some cards here. There's not enough alchemy cards in general to make a really huge impact on Historic or even Timeless for the most part. That used to be the case, but they've since added more people to the kind of like quality assurance, quality control card, the like level of these cards. So there's nothing that's like Crucius level anymore, or yeah, nothing that's too offensive anymore. So for the most part, it's very, very mid. Every now and then there'll be a playable card in Historic, which brings us to Avel. But for the most part, these are like rebalances to actually make these cards playable in alchemy. I know for new players, what they do usher you through is to like play alchemy cards, and then eventually they just push you right into the alchemy queues. And that may be a problem, you know, for some people, mainly because you're not playing the same format as like paper. So it kind of gives people like a weird first experience, which I'd agree with that. It's kind of a weird first experience, but alchemy as a format is rotated way quicker than other formats. So I don't know. It is kind of a better environment for newer players just in that regard. But for the most part, I think it's very degenerate in its own like little bubble. Other than that, it just kind of is a weird format. But yeah, anyways, talking about the actual stuff that changed. Again, all this stuff here is like rebalances to make these cards playable in Alchemy, because there are a lot of mythics and rares and stuff that really don't meet the bar. So I would imagine they're trying to make these playable in order to ensure that people can get value out of their mythics and rares. And then we have Kona, which I think is like a best of one omniscience menace there as well, because they don't have as many answers in general. That's one of the reasons why you see a lot more bans in Alchemy other than standard, because their best one queues are probably the most flooded out of all of them with new players, and so they want to make sure those are more inviting. And then Val, this is a uncommon card that just synergizes with Trelasara. So in Historic, this was a Luris combo deck. So having everything be like 2 mana and below in that deck, really important. So I believe Kona and Vel were both nerfed to 5 and 4 mana. So Vel's now 4 mana. So that's pretty much unplayable now. And it's an uncommon card. It's not like you'll lose any wild cards for this. It's really something that, like, if you liked playing that Luris deck, it's probably dead now. Just because Court of Calling will have to now find this for 4 mana. And that's a lot slower than it was before. So it's definitely not undoable, because Vel as a 4 mana Court of Calling target is similar to like what Yawgmoth would be in like Yawgmoth kind of birthing ritual decks. So I don't know. It's still not as offensive as it could be. But yeah, for the most part, that's those changes. Historic, we had a big shakeup here. Eldrazi Temple, Ajani, and Corrupt Rotation, and Scholar of Lost Trove, which is kind of a weird one. But if anybody knows how Historic best of 1Q is, Scholar of Lost Trove is probably the most played deck, and we'll look at that deck list in a minute and talk about why. But Eldrazi Temple didn't really need to be in the format. That's just something like, you know, Eldrazi already had a Soul Land with Ugin's Labyrinth, so making their Soul Land have a downside essentially is a lot better than just giving them multiple Soul Lands for Eldrazi. So this was not really healthy for the format, and it made Eldrazi kind of showcase best deck to the format, and a lot of people pointed at that deck as the best, when it's probably something like Ajani is the best deck in the format, because it can counter a lot of stuff. It has red, it can play Cleansing Wildfire, it can blow up lands, etc. But yeah, so Ajani being banned, though, it's like a huge win for the format. I would say both of those are a pretty big win, but the Eldrazi Temple is not going to affect Eldrazi as much as we would like, but it will slow them down just a little bit. Ajani, though, being gone completely kills the Lurse Bombardment deck, because that's kind of the whole point, is playing Ajani with Bombardment so you can flip Ajani and then make infinite tokens. You know, not infinite, but a lot of tokens. It creates a very unfair advantage very quickly. So there's a lot of things that have been nerfed from that deck. I wouldn't say it's fully dead, but it does kill it. It does hurt it a lot, not having their literal best 2-drop. And then Ocelot probably being 2 mana. It's like those two things being gone, I wouldn't imagine that it has much of anything at all to hit off of like their Marauding Raptor, whatever it's called. The 2-drop Raptor to actually do anything with. So this card being gone is like a huge hit to that, which is good. Yeah, so now Crop Rotation. This card is kind of a sleeper broken card. This is definitely like, if you play best 3 in Historic a lot, you might run into this every now and then, but it's very uncommon to hit this Lotus Field deck, because Lotus Field is just a combo deck that was like really popular in Pioneer, but even in Pioneer and Historic, it's like you need so many reps with that deck, and people typically, if they played it a bunch in paper like Hidden Strings, and yeah, they might come to MTGA just to play it. But yeah, so that was what this was being used for, and now it's gone, because I'm sure even with the low play rate, it's probably got an insane win rate just because of crop rotation, giving it an insane level of consistency and getting their combo in line every single time. Obviously, you need a stifle effect as well, but for turn 2, fetch a Lotus Field and then stifle it is pretty good and probably should be in the format. Also, there's Merit Lodge with Vampire Hex Mage. So, you know, those few things all together just kind of make the format a little bit more degen than it needs to be. Just really sleeper broken cards. Those are more of a timeless level, power level in general. And everything else here, these are all just like, you know, really good things that are happening for the format now. Other than these last two, which are just like, I think for fun unbans. These are actually really good. So Mages of the Moon, Harbinger of Seas, like maybe Merfolk could be a deck. Currently we have no effect like this for Merfolk in Historic, so this will be good. Mages of the Moon, I don't think Blood Moon is legal, so I guess this could be a thing for like mono red, or possibly is it, but probably not is it. But for the most part, like these two cards, Mages of the Moon is way less offensive than Harbinger, but yeah, I think those are good unbans, and they will give these decks a more fighting chance against Eldrazi and other stuff like that. So, you know, it just kind of gives them a window to kind of close out the game and shut off their opponent's stuff for a while. All right, so then Force of Vigor and Force of Negation. This is probably pretty good against the more artifact-based decks or like combo-based decks. Definitely not a main deck card by any means, but, you know, it could shut off some stuff like that. Also, they're unbanning Wilderness Wreck, so if there's a degenerate Wilderness Wreck deck out there, Vigor's here to shut it down. And then Negation, same kind of situation there. It's like, you know, if there was a really degenerate combo deck, like a Mizzix Mastery, Emergent Ultimatum kind of thing, then yeah, Force Negation could make a control deck mildly playable again. And Historic has not had a good control deck for a while. If you're facing a lot of like ajani and like other like creature decks and stuff, then yeah, control could be pretty good. Like a energy-based control deck is not the worst thing in the world, but it definitely isn't the best right now. All right, and then Endurance, really, really good card. I'm glad to have this for green. It's going to be pretty much an automatic sideboard card in anything green. I know I play Jungoifs a lot, so I'll be happy to have that on my sideboard. This is definitely the most balanced and chill evoke creature, evoke elemental of all the ones from MH2, and it will be definitely well received and welcomed against all of the graveyard bullshit. If you're playing best of one, this is going to be a main deck thing, so yeah, best of three, it's always going to be in our sideboard. And maybe, yeah, we can see maybe some bank control stuff pop up with Wilderness Wreck and Teferi. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how that changes things. Overall, it doesn't really change that much. Let's take a quick little look here at the Scholar combo deck. So this is a best of one deck, and what they would do, that's the lowest full combo. What they would do would be play the Scholar of the Lost Trove. It's the other cards. I don't know whether it's over there, but yeah, they would discard it with Faithless Looting, play Persist. You know, they have Life and Death as well, and they can discard Emergent Ultimatum, play Scholar, and then do literally whatever they want. They could also go Conspiracy Unraveler, same kind of situation there. This takes a lot more pieces in order to do this, so obviously we're not banning this, and then we're just going to ban the Scholar because that's always been the most degenerate of all things. And Izzet Charm here can do pretty much the same thing as Faithless Looting at instant speed though, so draw 2 and then discard 2. And yeah, also is a counterspell. So really good deck, terrorizing best of one, and it's really just unbeatable in best of one, I think. And that's just kind of what happens with Historic best of one in general, so you just have to look out for that. Okay, so that's enough about Historic. I don't know if there's a lot of Historic players out there, but if there is, things just got better, so that's a good step in the right direction. So let's talk a little bit about standard and what's going on in standard. So standard is by all means a balanced format right now. Whatever you want to call that nowadays. And the big thing to know about standard is that barrier to entry for any deck is that it has to beat the Badgermole Cub. Badgermole Cub has completely warped the meta around it. If it's not kept in check, it will run over the meta. So what happened in the PT is 40% of players took Badgermole Cub because of this, and it only had a 45% win rate, barely scraping its way into, I believe, the top 8 with like a 5-color rhythm deck. And it just did not perform well at all. So the whole thing here is that when a card is this strong, every single deck needs to have a sideboard plan against it. And so if your deck cannot answer a Badgermole Cub on 2, then it is not good enough for the meta. And that's just kind of like the base floor with any deck that you build for standard right now. And I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm saying that's actually a pretty toxic thing. I think that Badgermole Cub, because it's doing that, is not good. It's not great design. I personally believe that mana cheating like that shouldn't be on low costed cards like that. The only time it's ever been mildly balanced has been on Nissa, and Nissa Who Shakes the World. And that deck was a control deck, and they didn't get that effect until after turn 4, turn 5, if they ramped. So, you know, that was their win con as well. If that was legal now, it'd be so unbelievably broken with Badgermole Cub in standard. Obviously, you could do that in like Pioneer or something. Maybe it's good there. I don't know. Uro's not legal, so you're not able to do the stuff that kept those decks alive. But yeah, that being buried entry for pretty much every deck here is a really, I wouldn't say like bannable thing, but it is just kind of the state of standard right now. And if you ever think about whether or not something's bannable, it's always going to come down to, you know, if you were there for the VV Cauldron and Corey Still meta, everything pivoted towards that card. Everybody had somewhat of a sideboard plan against it. Not everything can answer enchantments, artifacts, and creatures, as well as doing it efficiently and on turn 2. So that is the whole issue with that, is like, yeah, temporary lockdown really did a lot of heavy lifting during that meta, and it wasn't even good enough. So like that alone made that card bannable within a faster time period than they actually did it. They need to respond to those metas quicker, which is why we have a faster ban period now, because if anything ever gets that out of line, where if you have 50% of player base taking that deck to a tournament and then it clocks in 2,000 matches and then has a 58% win rate, then that is the biggest problem that you could possibly have with the card, and that warrants an emergency ban. So then in Badgermole Cub's case, 40% of the meta took it, very high, and then 45% ended up not even qualifying for top 8. So the hate is there. You just have to make sure that you put it into your deck and you can respond to these cards as quick as possible. If you like to goldfish, which means like just kind of play Battleship, I do my thing, you do your thing over there, like just let me like do my thing, bro. Like that type of mentality doesn't exist in standard and hasn't for a very long time. If that's not okay for you, then I guess standard is probably not your thing right now. And I don't think will ever be your thing again, because that style of like gameplay is just like been kind of phased out. People like faster games in general, but that comes with a cost. It comes with the ability to answer the meta. You have to be able to do that. And when you don't answer Badgermole Cub, that's when people start to say the rhetoric of this is a turn 3 format, because it's really not. This format's really not a turn 3 format. But if you don't do anything to the Badgermole Cub deck, their board will be so unbelievably out of control by turn 3 that you'll pretty much be dead, like right then. With Heartfire Hero and Monstrous Rage, it was literally a turn 3 format where you would be actually dead like literally 0 life on turn 3. So that was when you could call it a turn 3 format, and then you would actually just be dead on turn 3. There wasn't any counterplay there. So right now it's more of the esoteric, I'm just dead. Like I can't do anything, so I am just dead, even though you'd be like at 20 life or whatever. And they would just spam out their whole hand, and then on turn 4 they would actually play out Crater Hoof or something and then just one shot you. So standard right now really is just a turn 4 format, but if you don't interact with Badgermole Cub, it will seem as though you're dead, and the advantage they have will be insurmountable by turn 3. So yes, you can call it very similar to a turn 3 format. I'd love to hear any counter arguments to that, but really that's just kind of like what it is. And I am acknowledging that it is turn 3 insurmountable advantage. The things that are answering right now, again, are 1-mana removal. So you have all types of 1-mana removal spells to answer those types of things. But for the most part, in the PT, a lot of elementals were taken. And then we had Sunderflock being the thing that people were able to just really nuke the Badgermole Cub boards. So they would let them kind of set up, maybe answer Badgermole Cub or 2, Bounce Up, Burst Lightning, Spell Snare. This is another card that was like really, really common. Spell Snare answers Badgermole Cub. So you do need things like this in order to kind of thrive in the meta. And then by turn 4, you could play Eddie Merc Crab on their turn and then survive, allegedly, and then Sunderflock their entire board, including their lands, because any Earthbent lands hit with Sunderflock go back to their hands, and they could effectively be on 1 mana or 0 mana. So getting hit with Sunderflock is literally a death sentence, and I've seen and done it to people many times, because if they Badgermole Cub twice on turn 2, they'll animate both their lands, and if that's all they have, then they could just be sitting there with 2 lands that both Earthbent, and then they get hit with Sunderflock, and they have to just kind of FF there. There's really nothing they can do after that, because they're 2 all in. They end up kind of nuking themselves. So yeah, so that's what's ended up happening to the meta. And this is a very fair deck. Also one of the more cheaper decks in the format too. So I really have enjoyed playing these kind of decks. For the most part, standard is really fun. It's just that you have to worry about the Badgermole Cup stuff, and you have to worry about, getting combo killed a lot. The combo kills are probably one of the more frustrating things about the format. Even though it's like Dimir Excruciator, we have another combo deck, control deck, can play Superior Spider-Man to Doomsday Excruciator, and then you just kind of lose the game after that. They can make you draw, they can mill you out with Restless Reef. It really just comes down to what kind of game plan you're doing in order to get around that. Turns out Deceit has been really good to both hate people's hands out and then just play a mid-range game plan. So, like if you're going to look at the meta from like the outside standpoint right now and be like, all right, well, what's the most common archetype in standard right now? And I think it would be a very close tie between mid-range and combo. So mid-range is pretty much every Badgermole Cub deck. Is it Spell Elementals? It's mildly tempo / mid-range Teamer Harmonizers, mid-range combo, Dimir Excruciator, mid-range combo control. Kind of falls into 3 categories. The rhythm decks, is it Lessons, mid-range control. So yeah, it's just a lot of mid-range right now, and that's what happens when aggro is not playable. So we don't have an aggro deck that can effectively do anything in the format. There's a mono red deck that is mildly playable, but it is not playable to the point where it can like create the balance that aggro is supposed to bring to metas. If you're totally against aggro, I get it, but this is why people with that type of mentality don't balance games, because you need to have all those things all together. Now it's on WotC for making aggro so unbalanced that they had to ban it out. And that's just really what it is. So aggro does need to be in the format, but I think I even said this to Mark Rosewater before, being like, yeah, I really like that you guys kind of made everything all in one package in Bloomburrow, but it was too much. Like the synergy became combo synergy. And that's just kind of what it is, where it's not so much that the mice would synergize with each other. It was that they would literally synergize in a combo style. And it was, I've gotten people push back on me like that and be like, that's just synergy, bro. It's like, no, when, you know, Manifold Mouse is giving double strike and then that double strike is turning into 14 damage. And it's like, yeah, dude, it's not just synergy at that point. That's just straight up combo aggro style stuff. So it's mutagenic growth light, and it's not really good for the format. So until we get something that can bring aggro back up, it's going to be a long mid-range journey into the next metas here. So anyways, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about here with this podcast. Let's talk about historic meta, talk about standard meta. Again, nothing's bannable. Standard's actually very diverse and constantly like changing and evolving, as they're saying in the actual article here. But yeah, it's just going to take some time to really get back into a good spot in terms of like a power level. So we'll see how it goes. If rotations come and Badgermal Cub ends up becoming the best thing again, and there's no actual answers for it, which probably won't happen. Yeah, maybe it could get banned at some point, but currently 40% meta deck that is 40% of player base getting a 45% win rate over 1,000 games. Not bannable, not by any standard, and yeah, it just is what it is. I would say save your money on standard right now, because every deck is over $1,000. Well, not over $1,000, but $800 to $1,000, and we didn't like it with VV Cauldron, so we shouldn't be accepting those prices right now. And yeah, I wouldn't pay anything more than $500 for a standard deck ever. So that's the only thing I push back against, and hopefully you do too. Anyways, catch you later.